Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt
And
Roast.
I'm Jessica Bun Bun.
Welcome to our reaction and review for You Season 5 on Netflix. The final season has come and gone, and I'm feeling a lot of different ways about it. But we'll just start by saying this. If you guys remember, we were reasonably high, I would say, on the first half of Season 4.
Mhm.
However, the second half of Season 4, to use a very scientific term, was complete poo. It did not bring anything good to the table. It was a wreck. I didn't like the big twist. I struggled with it the whole way through. And so I came into this final season being like, just be better than the end of season 4. I'm not going to set my expectations too high here.
Yeah, I have loved a lot of this show. I love season 1. I really enjoyed season 2 a lot. Season 3 was hit and miss. First part of season 4 pretty good, and then the last part was not great. So I just wasn't really sure what I was going to get out of this final season. And while there was a lot of stuff that I did like, it was a mixed bag for me.
I come out of it feeling reasonably satisfied. I think that every part of season 5 is perfect. Absolutely not. I think that there are some issues, but I do feel like creatively they at least stuck the landing where Joe Goldberg ended up. I felt like this,
Satisfying, yes.
yeah, this was the right place for the show to end in that way. I think they handled a lot of that stuff pretty well. I appreciate some of the callbacks, some of the
Mhm.
Easter eggs that we got over the course of this final season. And yeah, I think you probably as a whole went on a season or so longer than it really needed to. I think
Absolutely.
the biggest thing here is that with the guy like Joe, who is so reckless and narcissistic, and he's not like a Dexter. He's not one of these people who
No.
does try to plan and really think a lot of things through. He just is so haphazard that it is shocking to me that he managed to be out there in the wind for this long at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. Dexter's a good comparison because watching Dexter, I was always rooting for Dexter. And
Yes.
he's a killer, but I'm rooting for him. He's out there getting the bad guys and doing what he can. But over here, I never rooted for Joe. He was hurting people
Mhm.
and he was doing it in the name of saving people and helping people and being this white knight, but that wasn't what he was actually doing. He was just a bad guy
Yeah.
doing bad things as the main character. And with him, with his cage and always putting people in a box, it felt like there was no other ending that was going to be satisfying than making it that Joe Goldberg ends up sitting in a box by himself for the rest of his life. That had to be the ending.
Yeah, and I'm really glad they went that way because I just think
Yeah.
killing him off would have been easy, but at the
Not
same time, yeah,
satisfying.
not satisfying. Like he actually has to have some real punishment for what he's done, and I think this idea of him being stuck there by himself, having to deal with all of these people who have this unhealthy idealization of things that he's done, given
Mhm.
that he has spent most of the show with this unhealthy idealization of other people, relationships. Like, I think the biggest difference between him and Dexter is just that Joe's internal monologue is one that constantly shields him from any responsibility at all for what he's doing. Dexter knows what he's doing and he understands the reason why. Joe just constantly convinces himself, kind of like you're saying, I'm the hero. I'm doing this for these people. I'm making the perfect story because I am this literary learned man who's creating these epic romances for these women. When really, you're just the worst human being alive and you lack the ability to see it.
Yeah, and especially the show has done, for the most part, a really good job with the women that he's become obsessed with being characters that I relate to, that I care about, that I want to see have a better life, like Marianne, like Beck, who of course we've lost, like even Love in the first season, and I know she's a killer as well, but they did a really good job with characters that I really cared about, and I didn't care what happened to him. Every season I'm like, is this it? Is this the time Joe's going to get his cuz he deserves it?
Yeah, and I mean, it's finally happened. It's come a long way, but we'll talk a little bit in this video about how we got here, some of the big moments, some of the weaker moments as well. But before we do, be sure to hit that subscribe button because, yeah, we're having a good time discussing you here. But if you like Madeline Brewer on this show, she was around as Louise, aka Bronte. We're also covering The Handmaid's Tale, which she is a very big part of, and also The Last of Us on HBO.
Yeah, and speaking of Dexter, Dexter Resurrection is going to be coming up, and we're going to be covering that here
Yeah.
as well as Alien Earth. So hit that subscribe button. It really helps us here at the channel, and we really appreciate that. Also, if you want to support us further, you can follow us over on our Patreon. We'll have a link for you below. Over there, we're going to be covering Criminal Minds, Evolution, as well as Murderbot, and it is the only place that you are able to get those reviews. So thank you so much to everyone who has been supporting us over there. It means a lot.
Thank you guys so much. We really, really appreciate that.
Okay, so how is everybody feeling about this ending? I feel really good about how Joe is now in a box for the rest of his life, as he did with so many of these women. That part felt satisfying.
Yeah, really, really satisfying. Like, I'm very happy with how this show ended. It's a real ending. And I think that there is a lot of shows these days that are very hesitant to tie everything up that neatly because you always want to come back for more. You always want to do a revival. You want to revive
Dexter Resurrection.
Yeah, you want to have a Dexter resurrection. We don't need a you resurrection. I think just because of the fact that they handled this so perfectly, and I do think everybody involved here is gonna feel okay. That's like, okay, we told the story, beginning, middle, and end. Like, we can quibble, and yes, we will quibble with some of the decisions that were made along the way. But I think the most important thing is that we can come out of this feeling like, okay, this was really the right way to end it. Like, yeah, it's something that might have been predictable on some levels, but it's like,
It's fine.
yeah, I'm fine with something being predictable if something is good. And there were enough twists along the way that it made the story feel like it wasn't entirely predictable.
Yeah, I love seeing Marianne back. She was the person that I was actually hoping was going to actually take Joe down herself.
Mhm.
Of all the people that we saw back, or Nadia, I mean, she really deserved to have some revenge here as well. But Marianne was really the person I was hoping would take him down. And I know that she definitely played a role in moving Bronte and clearing her head from the Joe fog that she was in. So I was glad that she had some kind of a hand in it. But oh my God, that last fight scene with Bronte and Joe,
Yeah.
it just went on and on and on. Like, they're fighting, then she's getting shot, then she's getting drowned, then she's back, then she's back. I'm like, guys, just to wrap it up. This does not need to be going on this long.
I was on board with it until we got out into the woods. I think once we got out into the woods, then it was like, okay, now we're really taking a lot of time. And I get
took
it.
too long.
It's like a final boss fight at the end of a video game. And I play a lot of Japanese RPGs, and a lot of the final bosses on those games, it's like, oh, you have 20 different forms of this boss you have to play. And by the end of it, it's taking you 2 hours to beat the final boss. So I understand the idea of you want to make the final showdown feel epic, but I felt like the totality of the story was epic enough that, you know, yeah, they didn't need to draw it out necessarily as long as they did. I mean, in getting to the Marianne part of it, I think the thing that surprised me the most was just how limited her presence was in the final season. And I don't know if this was a scheduling thing because, you know, we are covering The Last of Us. Teddy Gabrielle's a part of that show in some shape or form. I know she's got some other things going on, so maybe they only had so much that they could use her for. But I kind of did think she was going to have a little bit of a larger role because that was the big carrot at the end of season 4. It was like, oh, Joe thinks that he's gotten away with all of this, but, you know, she's still out there.
Yeah, and that's why it felt very much like she's so invested and she's had so much happen to her and she over so long that for me it would have been way more satisfying if it was her, or even Kate, who's gone through it with him as well. I think introducing Bronte in this final season and then have her be the person that takes him down when there's so many people out there that Joe has really hurt, affected, ruined their lives, has Marion in hiding, you know, Nadia's in jail, like all these different things. I know Kate had a part of that as well, but for me, it would have been even more satisfying where I'd be like 10 out of 10 if it was one of them that came in and not, oh, in the final reel, this brand new person came in and they're the hero of the story.
Yeah, like they tried to make this effort to connect Bronte slash Louise to Beck and sort
They
of
did.
have it
Yep.
be okay. We're gonna have it be full circle so that maybe we'll be more invested. But even still, she's a new character,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying they went on this big retconning tour and magically fit Bronte in and all these things in the past, even though they kind of did that, but they did it in a way that was believable
Hmm.
enough. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I can buy into some of that. I can understand some of that, but would it still be more
Yeah.
compelling if it was one of these other characters? Sure, especially Kate, given that Kate has like unlimited money, power, resources, capable of doing almost anything. And that's kind of what I liked about that character the most was this idea of she's somebody who never needed Joe for a second in any aspect of her life. And even someone like her could still sort of fall into his games, to his honeyed words, to all of this sort of stuff that nobody was really immune from this false fantasy that he would create.
Yeah, and she really was somebody who had been part of some terrible, grim things and wanted to turn things around. And even though she knew what Joe had done, she felt like together they were two monsters that were going to turn it around and do better things and be better people, not realizing that Joe had no interest in doing that. And he's, still having affairs and messing around and killing people. And he's just a bad guy.
Yeah, I think the thing with Joe is just he's never ever going to be happy. And that was the biggest takeaway from watching every single season of this show, where it's like, okay, whenever he starts to think he has something, he always finds a way to mess it up. He always is
Yes.
like, okay, here's an affair I need to have. Here's somebody else I need to save. And that was always going to be the case. Like, that was the interesting part entering this season was it was like, oh, here's this woman who has seemingly accepted him for all parts of him, who knows the real truth about him. And it's okay. Of course, he's not going to be satisfied with that. So, who is going to come into his world and kind of shake up his foundation? Of course, it's going to be like the ultimate example of somebody who he thinks he needs to save, who is just, even to the extent that they're sleeping at the bookstore.
Okay, I'm putting on my beef hat.
All
We're
right.
far enough into
Okay.
this.
Let's do it.
So, Madeline Brewer, I love her. I
Yeah.
love her on The Handmaid's Tale. She plays my favorite character, Janine, over there. Her as an actress, I just really love her. So, when I heard that she was going to be part of this season, I was like, oh man, this is going
Yeah.
to be good. There, to me, was no real chemistry between her and Penn. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they just didn't do sort of chemistry on screen tests beforehand. Maybe it's just me, but because I've seen the passion like between him and Marianne and the chemistry between him and Beck and him and Love that first season, even with Kate, it just wasn't there that way. And I just don't know what it is. I don't know if it was the two actors were holding back, maybe just them. They're both great actors, but together it didn't work. I don't know if it was like even he kind of said this as well, where he was kind of like, oh, cool. I'm this trope of like the older man with this like 27-year-old, like, oh, great. Now I'm that guy kind of thing. Maybe I've just seen that too many times where I was like, yeah, it's not there. The Bronte character, especially the first few episodes she was in, was very immature and she was coming across as very immature, not quirky, and that kind of feel, which is what I think they were trying to go for with the writing.
Mhm.
She was just coming across as kind of bratty and immature and just not there. And it almost felt like he was like a dad with a kid. Like it didn't hit.
Okay, so there's a lot of interesting things you talked about in there, but I think that last thing you said about the ages of the characters, the age of Penn, and sort of the evolution, this is something that he himself has spoken a little bit about in interviews, and especially I think after season 4, there was a lot of discussion that he had about intimate scenes and his struggles and sort of doing those at that point, especially when, as he's getting older and Joe is getting older. I mean, the love interest on you let's just be honest, they're all kind of inherently the same age. And this is kind of a problem with Hollywood in particular. You know, young actresses are always being cast in these roles. And I kind of get this sense that he, as a performer, was getting more and more uncomfortable with doing this sort of stuff on a season by season basis. And yeah, that really stood out to me as well over the course of this season, where it just
Yeah.
never really felt like it clicked. And because this was the final season and because there was so much passion that was kind of at the center of it and everything was so twisted, like the intimate scenes had to be there. Like it was something that was an essential kind of part of this story that was being told. So there was no real way to get around it. But yeah, if I'm comparing this to season one with Beck, I
Hmm.
think season one is by far the best season of this show. I don't even, to me, it's none of them are even close to that, just because that chemistry with him and Beck in season one was just off the charts. And it was so easy to get invested in that, like, terrible dynamic that was going on there.
Well, yeah, and I mean, in season two, the first season with Love, that chemistry was really there with those two. I fell in love with them falling in love. Season three, obviously, with Love, it went
Yeah.
off the rails in a different way. But that first season with the two of them together, like the chemistry was really there. And the thing that I really actually liked about Kate was that she was more age appropriate
Yes.
for Joe. Even seeing that scene this season where Kate confronts Bronte, it looks like a woman there with a child, with a much younger woman. And I know Madeline Brewer is obviously not a child, but
Yeah.
together it feels like I've got someone who's a mature woman and someone who is still like barely there.
I really wonder, and this is something that's hard to really know, if the writers and the producers like intentionally wanted us to feel uncomfortable with this
Good.
relationship,
Yeah.
just because it's like, okay,
So we
well,
don't root for them.
yeah, so we don't root for them, or so we're kind of in a headspace of like, okay, this is getting even more uncomfortable, because I know this was a thing that once upon a time on You, there were a lot of people that were like, I know Joe Goldberg is bad, but I'm still thirsting over him. Like, I
Like
sort
Cardi B. I loved the Cardi B references in there of having her tweets out there
yeah,
about what was going on with Joe. I loved it.
it was a
She's
great.
such a fan.
She is such a fan, and it was a really good Easter egg. But that is kind of the indicative of what we're talking about here, where it's like they really wanted to kind of nip that sentiment in the bud once and for all, where it's like, okay, you can't be thirsting for this man. Look at what this man is doing, taking
Yes.
advantage of this younger woman who he believes is really, really vulnerable. And this is where I'll put on my beef hat and
Okay.
sort of say, Netflix. Okay, this is no surprise to
No.
anybody. You all know how I feel about binge drops in general, but
How dare you, Streamberry?
how dare you do this where you put it all out at once this season? Like, at
I
least in
know.
season 4, you had the dignity of splitting it up into two halves. And really, the way in which the episode 5 ended, and then episode 6, we kind of get into understanding who Louise really was and the
Mhm.
Beck connections and all of that sort of stuff. Like, you should have done that again, because it would have been a great cliffhanger at the end of episode 5, and you totally shortchanged yourself. I don't know if it's because this is the final season, you don't care anymore, you're just like, okay, let's just push all this out there. But this is the biggest problem you have with your content. People talk about it for a week and then they forget about it. Look at Severance, which dominated discussion for months. You guys will never have that with the release pattern that you're having. Maybe you don't care, but I think you should.
Yeah, especially with a show like this. This season
Yeah.
had an excellent supporting cast, really good stories this season. There, if this was a weekly show, you'd have people talking at the water cooler about it every single week.
Yeah.
Like there was something happening in every episode. There were no real duds this season besides the lack of chemistry that was going
Yeah.
on there. This was a solid season and there was a lot to talk about, but a lot of it is going to get lost because it is the final
Yeah.
season. Everyone's going to be talking about, oh, how did it end? Oh, Joe's in a box. Oh, he got what he got. And then all these other stories like the twins, Reagan and Maddie, and their stories, and Harrison, everything that went on, that was really fun, interesting, ridiculous stories, they're just going to get lost in the wash.
Okay, since you mentioned the twins, I want to make sure, Anna Camp, you are not getting lost in the wash
I
here.
know, she's so
I
good.
love Anna Camp. Nobody plays these weird, crazy people like Anna. Like she was on True Blood, played really crazy person. Great
Yes.
playing two crazy people on you at once. Very different personalities. I love even in the midst of like the desperation with Maddie that she's still wandering around yelling "boo boo" when
I
it
know.
comes. Like she is the best new addition of the show in the final season. It's not even close. Like she was just so fun to watch unfold and like shocking in a way that's like, okay, Maddie is still apparently out there and living a life after all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to see that happen. I just really like the Maddie character, and obviously the Reagan character was so evil
Yeah.
that she was easily part of like the best part of the show. Like watching her afterwards where she was Maddie but still having to pretend to be her sister, it was so chaotic. But she handled it so well, switching back and forth between these two characters. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, like Anna had the best role this season. Like it's always
She
fun when
did.
you get to play two different roles, but to balance it back and forth. And yeah, there are some elements of you that are ridiculous. But you know
That's
what?
fine.
That's the show that this is. This show has always been ridiculous. It's always it has made us question believability on a number of times because if this show was more believable, Joe would have been caught years ago, and they could never do that because they just wanted to keep it going for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, he murdered someone on a live stream and got away with it.
Yeah, like that is kind of everything you need to know. But okay, here's this is not a big issue. I'm just gonna say that right now, so everybody's just like, Matt, you're getting too upset about this. Where was Jenna Ortega? Okay, listen, you guys managed to get Zach Cherry back for like 10 seconds, and
He's on the biggest show on the planet right now.
yeah, he's on the biggest show on the planet. He's also on Fallout. He's a busy dude. He manages to show up. Why couldn't we have 10 seconds of Jenna when they're doing all the montage of all these people speaking out about Joe? Like, I know last season they said she was busy doing Wednesday. I understood all of that. I have to feel like they at least reached out to her, and maybe she was busy doing a movie or Wednesday or whatever. But you don't have 30 minutes to go on Zoom and just like read something. You didn't have to show up on set.
No, she needed to show up. I feel like she needed to be part of this. If you're going to bring back all these other people that were such an important part of Joe's life to wrap it up,
Yeah.
she should have made the time to do that, or the show should have found a way to make time for her if she's busy doing something else.
There were two key omissions in the final season. Like one of them's Jenna Ortega, and the other one, how do you not have John Stamos? Like, where is
I
John
know.
Justice for John? I mean, not that John Stamos was a great therapist or anything.
No.
He did plenty of bad things, but he did not murder Guinevere Beck. I really felt like we were at least going to see him, I don't know, get out of prison or have something like that, because they showed kind of the aftermath of all of this. And I mean, maybe he wasn't available either, and this is no slight against John Stamos, sitcom legend, but you are not a star on Wednesday. I have to think that you might have had a little bit more time to do this.
Yeah, I mean there was more than enough time. They could have cut down some of that final fight that was going on with
No,
Bronte
yeah.
and Joe and made room for it. Absolutely. I mean it was such a important part of this story anyways, where it's like, we had Bronte meeting with other people that were affected by Joe in some sort of way, including Clayton, whose father is Nikki. It's just kind of like, okay, yeah, justice for Nikki.
Yeah, I think that they missed the boat on just like a couple of little things. I mean, there are other ridiculous youisms that I've always had to just try to stomach, including the idea that whenever Joe is on secret reconnaissance mode, he just puts on a hat
I
and he
know.
just wanders around. It's kind of like, I've watched a little bit of Your Friends and Neighbors on Apple TV Plus, and John Hamm just enters all these rich people's houses with like a hat on or something, and there's security cameras, I'm assuming, everywhere. And it's like, okay, this guy's just never gonna get caught.
Yeah, it's a bit, listen, it's you. There's a lot of this that's quite ridiculous.
Yeah, there ultimately is, but I just think that if you have watched this show to, have a little bit of a good time, have a
Yes.
little bit of escapism, like this is not some fundamentally deep show that's got a bunch of symbolism or anything like that going on. It's all really just about this extremely terrible, toxic individual who has done all of these horrible things to people, and ultimately how we go about having his undoing happen. And there were some good
Yeah.
twists along the way that got us there.
Yeah, I will say that as much as I didn't really like the Bronte character because I did find her very immature and very annoying for a lot of it, it was cool to see sort of that arc with her where she's like, yeah, I'm here for Beck. Oh, no, no, I'm falling in love with him and I'm getting like my head is getting messed up in all of this. So by the time they're actually like, yeah, we're taking him down, she's seeing it from the way that Joe has been making her see it. Oh, he's protecting me. We set this up for him to think that he's protecting me from Clayton. We did this. This is not him. To then have that conversation with Marianne where her head is cleared again. That part of the arc with her was really well done.
It was, and I think it really speaks to one of the show's central messages, which is just how people like Joe are able to do what they are and how nobody's really immune to it, even if you know that it's wrong. Louise clearly knew that this was wrong 10 ways to Sunday, but even she got really sucked in, and it did take all of these other people, including Marianne, to really go to her and help her to open her eyes. But even still, she struggled with it, I think, up until the very end. And they told that part of the story really, really well. And then they had a 20-minute chase scene in the woods.
Absolutely. Overall, I feel like this was a pretty strong season, but yeah, the chemistry wasn't there with Bronte and Joe for the whole thing for me, so that really was a bit of a struggle for me watching this.
Yeah, I will say I'm glad they got the ending that they did. A part of me will be
Mhm.
sad just because, like, this is the ultimate, you turn on this show, maybe you do a couple little chores here or there, maybe, eat a sandwich or something like that. It was easy, disposable, but also kind of chaotic and dark. And it had a lot going on, but it's the right ending. And now we all move forward.
Absolutely. No, it was there was no other ending. If they had just killed him off, I would have been disappointed.
Yeah.
He was always going to end up in a box by himself.
Well, what did you guys think? Is this the right end for you as a series? What did you think about this season? Also, let us know your favorite season, your favorite love interest, all these things to kind of let us catalog this show in the
Beck,
comments.
Beck, Beck, Beck.
Yeah, look at us. We're in agreement. Beck was just really, really good.
Yeah, she was.
All right, well, hit that subscribe button for more coverage, and you can support us further by joining our Patreon. That link is in the description. Like Jess said, we're covering exclusively there Criminal Minds, Evolution, and also Murderbot coming up. Thank you guys so much for your support. We'll see you here next time.